lot of you guys ask me this question for months, maybe even a year. I've been hearing, what is the rate for color grading? Well, in this video, I'm gonna talk about it, and I'm gonna try to basically make it as simple as possible. I'm not gonna go in every single individual aspect of color grading, like music video, documentaries, whatnot. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give you basically two numbers. That way you can go from and figure out basically how much to charge for color grading. So, the beginner colorist, the floor-based colorist in LA, I'm talking about relatively, some studio, it's not somebody like complete underground garage or whatever, beginner studio. It's $200 an hour. So if you're a beginner colorist, $200 an hour, that's pretty much rate. Now, whether you want to exclude a little bit, taxes or house fees, whatnot, separate talk, okay? That's completely different. Another number I want to throw out there is a feature film color grading. Of course, I'm not going to talk about, Tom Cruise or some like super high-end Hollywood movie color grading. Just, average, like, well-shot feature film with moderate budget. So, the fee would be starting $10,000. That's basically a freelancer fee, for color grading a full feature film. And based on those numbers, make up your own mind. Now, I know some of you are probably going to argue and say, oh, those, like, unrealistic numbers, where are you getting those numbers? So, this is the industry numbers, okay? Color grading is very expensive project. If you guys seen my tutorials, you know how sometimes I spend 30, sometimes 40 minutes just doing one shot. Of course, granted, I'm explaining and, we're talking about those kind of stuff. I'm kind of going slow a little bit. But, I had projects where sometimes you spend 2 hours on a single shot. Maybe 3 hours. So, color grading is very expensive. Not only you need to possess the knowledge of like codecs, formats, and how to color grade, basically have experience. It's also very expensive when it comes to film equipment. Color grading is not something you pop on your laptop, even though some people do it, but that kind of color grading looks very amateurish, very basic. You can tell right away. If we're talking about like a legit color grading, when you do mask, when you, relight something, when you change color, something like a complete decent color grading package, it's very expensive. And I'm not even talking about having the proper keyboard or proper monitors, whatnot. All those kind of stuff cost a lot of money. So a lot of people ask me like what to charge, how do you go about it. So here's basically a couple numbers, right? From those numbers you can basically go from there. Like, for example, documentary, anywhere between like 35 minutes to 40 minutes documentary, somewhere average would be $1,500 for a color grading documentary. Let's say that documentary going to broadcast. It can be more. It depends what kind of documentary you're doing. Depends on the quality. Depends how much work they want you to do. But average cost for like, let's say 30-minute documentary is about $1,500. That's another number for you. Again, those are not just random numbers. It's a lot of factors included. But that's sort of average, cost. Let's say if you're doing some kind of prime time Netflix, original series, and it's got to look like top notch, of course, the charge is more, because then we're talking about more like feature film status. But if we're talking about, let's say, average kind of documentary that's going to be shown on TV, maybe even Netflix, but nothing prime time or anything like that. So we're talking about $1,500 US dollars per episode. So those about average numbers for color grading. Now, again, depending on your skill level, depending on the equipment you have, basically that's about, sums it up. So from those numbers, you can do your own rate, or hopefully that kind of help you to guide you through basically, the whole process. Another very interesting thing I kind of want to talk about it. Sometimes, people get surprised, like clients get surprised, they have let's say 30-second commercial, they come to you and you give them the rate, and they're like, oh, why so much? I know somebody who can do it for $50. Well, that's unrealistic number, because if you're doing commercial for television, we're talking about a very, very, complicated color grading if you want things to look good. If you're doing car commercials, I mean, we're talking about tons of nodes. We're talking about like 30, 40, 50 nodes. Sometimes like interior and whatnot, but it's kind of different topic. But commercials are very picky in its whole nature. Don't think just because it's 30 seconds you kind of have to say, oh, just give me $20, I got it. No, commercials actually very expensive. Commercial work can easily be for 30 seconds a few $1,000s. Of course, depending what you're color grading. But commercial is not because it's 30 seconds you need to, take 50 or $100 and be like, okay, because it's 30 seconds or it has few shots, okay, I got it. Those kind of stuff require a lot of work done. Same as music videos, for example. Even though music video is only 3 minutes long, in those 3 minutes, you're basically putting the maximum quality. You put, completely higher end color grading in such a tiny piece. Plus, a lot of music videos have very short cuts, a lot of cuts, and they're short. Sometimes you get 200, 300, maybe even 400 shots, like quick, side by side. 400 shots, that basically, in some cases, could be half or 1/3 of the feature film. So think about it. If the feature film beginner colorist rate 10 grand, and then you have half of the amount of shots in music video, you know, of course, I'm not saying you should just randomly charge thousands of dollars what I'm talking about, but I'm giving you these numbers as a guide. That way you guys kind of know basics, what things cost out there. Because I know a lot of times people or clients, whatever, they kind of try to guilt trip you or cheat. You're saying, oh, somebody else offered me this or somebody else. No, I mean, that is the proper rate for the service. Color grading is not basically cheap service. Color grading is higher end process. Therefore it costs money. Color grading, it's not like you drop the lot and you call it a day. It requires a lot of knowledge. You need to know the formats. You need to know basically if you're gonna do this on this screen, how it's gonna look on this screen. Like, you need to understand the entire process of that. On top of the equipment is cost a lot of money. Even though, for example, you can assemble relatively powerful computer for like few $1,000s, like I recently did. If you haven't seen it, check out video. I'm gonna put link somewhere on top. Essentially, you still want to have a lot of power. Like, besides my computer, I have one monitor, I have another monitor, then I have my reference monitor over here, I have the keyboard thing, then you have professional speakers to kind of monitor all that, the false colors, and you start adding on and on and on, and your equipment costs a lot of money too. So when you do a project, you're always supposed to think in normal process, the cost of running your equipment. Like, for example, if you're a cinematographer, for example, like the projects I do, I no longer have my own gear. I just rent, because I figured it makes absolutely no point for me spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every single project buying my old gear, and by the time I finish putting it together, there's new gear comes out and I end up being upside down. The point of you doing work, so you make money, so you make living, you make profit. If you constantly upside down, that means you're not running business correctly. You're not supposed to be upside down. This is very interesting thing, like among amateur community, when people say, oh, I need videographer with gear, $200 a day. I mean, that's unrealistic number. In some cases, $200 a day won't even get you just a lens. So it's very important that you understand the process and how to break down the cost, and basically on top of your own personal value, because when you run a business, even if you're running as a freelancer, obviously the freelancing rates a little bit, not completely, but a little bit different than, some big house in LA. But you need to be looking at, at the cost of it, electricity cost, rent house, whether you're doing in your house or whether you're doing in a garage or some office. So rent house, electricity bill, the car usage. It's not, a lot of people don't understand this thing. It's not you buy the computer and all of a sudden you're in this like little tiny space. This is your business. No, the business is a big uh, bubble. Everything you do, like the internet cost. Me recording right now for YouTube cost money. Right now my electricity running, my computer running. Like for example, if I zap right now my graphics card, I don't have a graphics card. So you always need to kind of think in those uh, aspects whenever you put the price. And I'm not by any way saying that you're supposed to upcharge, but everything has a price. If you have an equipment, it's still, you can include some rental fee of usage of your equipment. That way, if tomorrow your graphic card dies, you're not going to be like out of business. If you're running business straight to cost, I mean, you're not Costco, you're not Amazon to do that kind of stuff. So based on those rates I give you, you can, come up with your own conclusion how much to charge. Basically, I kind of don't want to blob about it. There's a lot of different things, included in this whole process. But since a lot of you guys asked me about it, this is the basics. If you want to take a look, the things that I use in my setup, it's in the description below. All the components I use and stuff like that on my computer setup. But that's about all. So answering the question, how much, the rate, whatnot. So I'll see you guys in the following videos. Subscribe and take care.